What's up, you guys? This is Saad Alessa, and you're watching another episode of the Saad Truth. We're back. I'm excited to be back. It's been a while. I was really busy working on a couple of things. I don't know if you've been up to date, but I just got back from Kuwait. That rhymes and it sounds good. But yeah, I just completed and finished performing my greatest show to date in stand-up comedy. I'm very grateful for it. It was in Kuwait City. I opened for the one and only Maz Jobrani in Kuwait, and the show was sold out. There were 2,000 people in the crowd. And it was awesome. It was really awesome. That's part of the reason why I haven't been really on top of the Saad Truth and other stuff. I was preparing for the show. I was really nervous leading up to the show. It took place December 4th, and it was in Kuwait City. And if you were there, thank you so much for coming. If you were supportive on Instagram or social media, thank you so much for your support. But it was awesome. It was awesome. And this is the shirt that I used and kind of sold after the show. And on the back, it says the date of the show, and it says Saad Alessa, live in Kuwait City, December 4th, 2019. Quick thing, there was a spelling mistake when they printed the shirt. There's an O-N missing unconventionally, but I guess it's unconventional spelling, so we're good to go. It was awesome, honestly. This episode, I want to talk about the show and what it means to me and what it meant for me to perform in Kuwait. If you've been up to date and, on top of my story in general, you'll realize that Kuwait to me is home, but also I decided to leave Kuwait 2016 because I wasn't happy, I wasn't fulfilled. There were some things happening with the family, and I just felt like I didn't belong 100%. That's just the truth. And I decided to leave Kuwait in pursuit of something that's better for me. And I don't want to sound like a broken record and repeat the story, but I left Kuwait and I decided to move back to the United States in search of something that will fulfill me and make me feel complete again. What's interesting is before I left, someone that's very close to me, a family member told me, make sure that when you leave Kuwait, you're not running away from your problems. And that hit me hard because it took me time to realize what they meant. But I've also figured out that, there's nothing wrong with sometimes deciding to step away or walk away from a problem. I feel like, in this day and age, we're so focused on always facing everything head on. And sometimes deciding to take a step back and coming from a different angle is also a good idea, if that makes sense. So to sum it up, I'm just going to say that if I didn't decide to leave Kuwait in 2016, I would have been probably stuck in my old ways and same ways of thinking, that I wouldn't have been able to fix what I thought was broken in me and why I didn't feel fulfilled and why I didn't feel happy. The way I see it is running away from the problem isn't true. I decided to perhaps run towards something greater. And what's funny is that by running towards something greater, like coming to the United States again and deciding to pursue something that I thought was more fulfilling, because at the time I was doing an automotive project, then I went to law school, and from law school came stand-up comedy. It's a long story. I explained it in Unconventionally Arab, another episode of the Saad Truth, and perhaps the first episode of the Saad Truth, I explained how I came across stand-up. But if you think about it, I ran towards something better for me, only to find myself coming back to Kuwait and performing what I found as my true calling in front of everyone that was back home. And some of them were always supportive. Most of them were always supportive. But a lot of them told me that I was crazy to leave Kuwait, that I was crazy to pursue something that's out of the box, that is not in line with, an entrepreneurial spirit. Or and by the way, entrepreneur in Kuwait means that you run a business or start a company. Unfortunately, in our society, in our community, arts aren't really seen as something that, are entrepreneurial. The career of art, whether it's music, painting, performance art, it's not considered entrepreneurial. They see it as a hobby or a side thing. And what's crazy is I also bumped into a family member the day after my show, December 5th, or was it December 6th? It doesn't matter. I bumped into a family member. I was having breakfast with a friend of mine. As I was walking away, leaving the restaurant, I saw a cousin of mine and his wife and kids, and they stopped me and they said, hey, congrats on the show. It was awesome. We heard it was awesome. Sorry we couldn't make it, blah, blah, blah. All the fluff talk. And then they went ahead and dropped the 5 questions that every pretty much Arab drops. What's next for you? What's your plan? Are you putting all your eggs in one basket? Make sure that you don't consider stand-up as something as a career. It's good to have it as a hobby, but you need something that gives you financial security, something that you can rely on, something your family can rely on. And they asked me like whether I'm going to move back to Kuwait, and I said no, I don't see it in the near future, and blah blah blah. And then they went ahead and said, well, what about your identity? And what's interesting is, what about my identity? I'm going to ask, because the way I see it is an identity is an ever-evolving thing. The moment you have a narrow sense of identity, like a final identity, is the moment you're going to be threatened by everything else that's different, right? Like it took me a long time to figure out how to live my truth. And by the way, when I say how to live my truth at the time that I am my truth. Does that make sense? Like my truth will continue to change. My ideologies will continue to change. My perspective will continue to change. So what is my truth today may not be what my truth is a year from now. It might not be what my truth is tomorrow. It might not, like it's definitely not what my truth was last year or a few days ago. So I lost my train of thought, but I guess like where I'm going with this is that my identity isn't connected to a specific timeline in my thinking saying like, okay, that's my perspective and that's how I'm going to live my life and that's what I'm going to do. And anything that's not in line with my belief is something I have to disregard. I'm open to everything and anything. I'm always open to everything and anything, no matter how difficult it is. And to be honest, I've been going through a lot of, difficult times because my identity is right now under construction. I've come to realize that it was really hard for me to unshed societal expectations and make that jump and actually commit to a career that I've decided is what my true calling is in life today, because it's my truth today. And I just said that, and at the end of the conversation, I think they realized that there's no point in continuing the conversation. But I said, listen, I really appreciate your advice and that I shouldn't put all my eggs in one basket, and you're right. And I don't know why I said you're right. I wish I pushed back, but I also wanted to end the conversation because I didn't want to be, and no offense to them, I just didn't want to be around people that were giving me, advice on the go. Like if you really give a shit about my life, call me, say, hey, let's meet and sit. And it's the people that want to throw quick pieces of advice at you on the go that really get on my nerves, because you have no clue what I've been through. You have no clue what our lives are about, separate of each other. And it's like you feel the need to tell me how to live my life. And even though it might come from care or fear that, I might not have a great career, or fear that no one is like them, and what does that mean if he's pursuing his dreams? Does that mean I failed? I don't know where it's coming from, but it really gets on my nerves. I appreciate it comes from a good place, but it's just, it's not the right time. Like if you really care about someone, and that's for any parent out there, anyone that's, in a position to give advice, no matter how successful you are, if you really give a shit about the person you're about to give advice to, please make the effort to actually sit down with them, hear them out, talk to them about their story, what's going on in their life, understand where they're coming from, and then try to think about the piece of advice that you're going to give them. Because if I was someone that's different, I guess, or someone that's quickly shook by someone else's opinion, that could have affected my perspective on what I consider an accomplishment, performing in front of 2,000 people in Kuwait in English. I'm not going to say like, we accomplished a new milestone, but we did. We actually did. It was, one of the best shows put together in Kuwait for comedy. Ignite Events did a great job putting it together. Shout out to Zaina. She's one of the partners at Ignite. She's the one that actually fought for me to do the show in Kuwait and booked me and, made it happen. So thank you, Zaina. It was really awesome. My whole family was out there. They all came out to support. A lot of my friends, high school friends, people I haven't seen in years. And by the way, if you were there, I was on stage and I saw a lot of you. I just couldn't, I wish I could be like, hey, what's up, you? Good to see you. Long time no see. Let's catch up after the show. But that would have interrupted my whole set. But it was really nice to see everyone that came out to support. It was really beautiful, especially that I always felt that I needed to find a way to belong to Kuwait in a way, because I've always felt like an outlier. And by being back in Kuwait and doing the show, it was like an invitation again to accept that, there might be a chance that it could be what I consider home again. And by the way, when I say home, I believe home is where you find yourself. Sure, like it's my country, it's my home, but home as in where I, thrive is for me now today. My truth is Los Angeles, and it doesn't matter. It's not the United States versus Kuwait. It's not like that. Don't get defensive and crazy. I'm just saying that home for me is where you feel that you can be the true you and not have to filter anything, and where you find yourself. And to me, that all happened in Los Angeles. Kuwait will always be the country that I love, a place where I grew up. My family is there. The land there I cherish. But for some reason, right now, the society and my goals are not in line. I just can't be there because every time I'm there, all we're talking about is what I should do with my life. Literally. It's like from every family gathering to every like friend outing, all the conversations are revolved around how I am going to sustain my future, what kind of job I could be doing on the side while doing comedy, when I'm gonna get married, where do I want to raise my kids? Like I don't even know. Like I have 2 dogs, and I don't even know if I don't even know if it's worth it to have a yard anymore. Like it's just like I'm not thinking about where I'm gonna raise my kids until I get to the point where I have kids, and then think about where I'm gonna raise my kids when they're even at the age where they even care, to be raised properly. I guess it's just here's you know here's another thing. Like the reason I've been so happy this last month, even though the last 3 years have been accumulation of piles of shit on top of each other, is because I've come to realize that I only own the moment. I'm only in the moment, and I'm so grateful for every moment. I'm so grateful for this moment, having the opportunity to record this, to talk to you guys. And, and that's something that I found on stage that night too, because before getting on stage, I was so nervous. Like I saw the venue empty of 2,000 people. And then I went to the green room, I walked, back out again, and I see the room filled with 2,000 people. And I just felt the sense of, I don't know, like butterflies in my stomach, like my legs didn't work. And then when they called my name to get on stage, the first step didn't really work. Like I was like, let's move forward, but I didn't really move forward. In my head, I was moving forward, but my legs weren't moving forward. And then the moment I got to the stage, I set my foot on stage, and it's like something in my head said, you're either going to give in to the nerves right now and lose it, or you're going to like embrace this and be present and enjoy it. All the work has been done, all the practice has been done. So what are you worried about? And do the best you can with whatever you've, practiced. And that's something I've picked up from, jiu-jitsu, to be honest, because in jiu-jitsu you realize that repetition breeds confidence. Like successful results breed confidence. Confidence doesn't just come from, confidence without actual historic, a historic track record on actual success rate is just stupidity, in my opinion. Like to be confident, actually confident, you need to do whatever it is. Like if you're a comedian, do a few shows that actually work, you'll be more confident. If you do shows where you're constantly bombing, you're not going to be as confident. So it's just, that's, something I picked up from jiu-jitsu is like, in order to do well in a competition, in order to fight well, you need to practice perfectly, and approach practice with the right focus, the right regimen, and repeat. Repetition breeds confidence. That's just the key. And when I got on stage, I decided to embrace the moment and embrace the crowd and like honestly, I had a 15-minute set prepared for the show, and I ended up being on stage for about 25 minutes. So I don't know how that happened. I loved every second of it. There were moments where I feel like I just, became automated. I wasn't really present, and I called myself back into being present. And it was beautiful. And that's really why I've been really happy lately, because I've come to realize that I shouldn't give a shit about anything else I'm hearing outside of my inner voice, my calling, what I feel is true to who I am. I'm really appreciative and grateful for everything that's been difficult in my life. Truly, everything. From family issues to being isolated here in Los Angeles, to feeling that I have no sense of belonging or no sense of tribe, to feeling that, there's so much uncertainty when it comes to my career, how I'm going to stay in the States, all that stuff that people go through. And we all go through these kinds of things. But I've come to realize that I really do enjoy facing uncertainty head on. And the conclusion is, sure, I may have started by running away from my problems in Kuwait, but I ran towards something greater that only brought me full circle back to face the exact same problems, but by doing what I consider my true calling and sharing that thing that I found with everyone else that was there. Whether they wished me well, whether they came to see me fail, whether they came to support, it doesn't matter, because I'm no longer attached or connected to anyone else's opinion of what I'm doing. It is a heavy episode, I feel, and I'm going to have a quick sip of coffee. But in general, it was amazing. It was beautiful. Maz was really awesome. In the green room, we got to chat a little bit before and after the show. And the day before, we had a rehearsal. And that's the funny part. We had to rehearse in Kuwait in front of the Ministry of Entertainment or Information. And they wanted to see the set that we're going to perform at the show. Because I don't know if you guys know this. If you're from Kuwait, you probably know this. If not, well, there you go. There's like a set of rules on what you can and cannot say in stand-up. First of all, you got to know that stand-up is on a temporary ban in Kuwait because a professional comedian, I'm not going to mention his name, was in Kuwait doing a show, and he talked about sex and politics and religion and kind of like butchered the whole situation. And so they put a temporary ban. And then so the booker told us that we need to move across the stage back and forth nonstop, because then it's considered a theatrical performance or a play rather than stand-up comedy. So I guess they took stand-up comedy literally. Like if you're standing up, then you're doing stand-up comedy, but if you're moving around, it's a play. I wonder what would have happened if I just sat down. But anyways, so we were like, cool, we'll do that. And then there was like all these restrictions, like you can't do sex jokes, you can't do politics, you can't do religion, you can't cuss. And if you know me, you know that my jokes are, revolve around all these topics together. And I can't not cuss. It's just how I speak. And so it was really hard for me. But I said yes, and I think we pulled it off. But I'm not going to lie. The day of the rehearsal, I did a 5-minute set. That was nothing close to what I was going to perform the next day. They approved it. And then the next day, I did my 15-minute set that included politics, religion, sex jokes, and cussing. And it worked out. We lucked out. They didn't show up that day. But we lucked out. We did well. And I think the crowd enjoyed the comedy. I think it went really well. There's definitely a lot for me to learn from this show. I watched the tape, and of course, I'm my worst critic, so I don't think I performed as well as I wanted to. But to be honest, I did a little better than I expected, because I really thought that the nerves were going to get the best of me. It was really beautiful to have my mom there watch me perform live. She was in the front row in the center. It was really awesome. It was really beautiful to see all my loved ones, my best friends were backstage with me, and it was really a surreal experience for me, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful to be back doing the podcast. So again, every Wednesday there's going to be an episode on YouTube. Just type my name, Saad Alessa, or the Saad Truth Pod. On Instagram, it's Saad Truth Pod. Follow, subscribe, share if you like it. And good to be back. Until next time, I'm Saad Alessa, and this has been the Saad Truth.